the Pioneer viewers, I hope you're doing great. Today, the Pioneer team is here again to update you on the latest developments in Russia-Ukraine war. We're going to take a detailed look at the map right now. According to the current reports, the front line continues to increase in activity. It is possible to state that we are in a process where changes on the front line are also quite close. So what is the latest situation on the front line? Let's take a look together now. As the Pioneer team, we continue to provide you with the most up-to-date information about the Russia-Ukraine war. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications for the map reports and current news we published every day. You can also support me and my team by using the super thanks button below the video. If you're ready, let's analyze the current developments together with the presentation of the Pioneer. We start by analyzing the latest developments on the Kherson front line. According to the latest reports, the Kherson front line had more active day compared to the previous days. When we look at the reports, we observe that the units of the Russian armed forces supported by long-range weapons targeted Ukrainian Marines again in Krynki. Russian troops are in a pointless persistence here. It has been unable to make any tactical gains for a month. Moreover, a large number of ammunitions and Russian troops have been destroyed in these areas. Reports shows us this. However, Russian commanders are far from seeing this reality. The persistent continuation of these attacks is affecting the Russian troops in many ways. Let us also state this here. We have told you many times before the confusions and the problems within the Russian army. One of these problems was the internal conflicts and desires from the fame among the Russian commanders. Our guess is the Russian commanders here want to make a gain and increase their positions in the Russian war leadership. However, they don't seem to care if this leads to a destruction of the large number of Russian soldiers. As a result, the Ukrainian Marines managed to hold their positions in these areas today. According to reports, the infantry units of the Russian armed forces had to retreat during these last attacks, suffering heavy losses, and the demarcation line on the front line is largely stable. Let's also briefly mention the artillery activity in the region. According to the latest reports, artillery units of the Russian armed forces targeted positions of the Ukrainian armed forces in Bergovoya, Antoniivka, and Tagininka. In turn, artillery units of the Ukrainian armed forces targeted Russian armed forces positions in Volapyristan, Oleshki, Kasakamsk, and Korsunka. Let's move on to the latest developments on the Zaporizhzhia front line. When we look at the reports, we see that the units of the Russian armed forces are carrying out persistent attacks, just like on the Kherson front line. There is a similar situation here. The Russian army cannot make any gains despite persistent attacks, but they still carry out these attacks. In the west of Robotin and Novoprokopivka, we observe that the Russian troops are attacking again. However, borderline is largely stable. There are also reports that the units of the Ukrainian armed forces are carrying out a series of offensive operations in the Verbov direction. So far, however, there have been no border changes in these areas either. Let's also look at the artillery activity in the region. According to the latest report, artillery units of the Russian armed forces targeted units of the Ukrainian armed forces stations in Pityakhatki, Malotokmakta, Blogoroi, Golyapol, Krasnaya, and Maliniivka. In turn, artillery units of the Ukrainian armed forces targeted units of the Russian armed forces stations in Zhorbianki, Kopani, Novoprokopovka, Verbov, and Novofedoryovka and Mariupol. Now let's take a brief look at the Vuhledar sector. Today, the Russian army again launched a series of attacks on Stromerk and Yorkhain. However, they failed to achieve any results. Ukrainian troops managed to repel the Russian troops. We continue with the Donetsk front line. According to the latest reports on the Donetsk front line, units of the Russian armed forces continued their attacks on Novomykhailovka from the south and north. However, the Ukrainian resistance here is still holding its positions. We can say that this is perhaps the strongest line of the defense of the Ukrainian army in the region. The Russian army has still not made any progress. On the other hand, there is a similar situation in Gorogorivka, where the Russian artillery is working intensively. The Russian army had to retreat, suffering losses during infantry attacks with artillery support. The situation is the same in Pervomskoye and Severnoye. Russian troops supported by long-range weapons have entered the southeastern outskirts of the city in the direction of the industrial zones. We can now say that the Ukrainian armed forces are in a serious trouble here. However, as we mentioned in our previous reports, these momentary changes are not a major problem. If the Ukrainian army can regain control with its strategic moves, the situation can change drastically. The Russian armed forces also attacked Stepnoe after the shelling. However, there is no border change in this region today. We have also said that the following about the situation. Yes, The Ukrainian army manages to repel the attacks of the Russian troops at many points, but for the continuity of this, the support must continue. Otherwise, first Europe and then the whole Western world may face the Russian threat. Let's continue with the artillery activity in the region. According to the latest reports, artillery units of the Russian armed forces targeted positions of the Ukrainian armed forces in Pobeda, Novoskoye, Tonikoy, and Novokalinov. In turn, artillery units of the Ukrainian armed forces targeted Russian positions in Mariinka, Donetsk, and the village of Krasnogorovka. We continue with the Bakhmut front line. Our knowledge of the latest situation here is very limited. However, what we can say is clearly is that the Russian army is continuing its struggle to seize the dominant hills, but there is no results. The Ukrainian army is still defending its positions on the dominant hills around Klishchivka and Andreevka. Let's look at the Luhansk front line. According to the latest reports, after shelling on the Luhansk front line, the Russian armed forces carried out a series of attacks on the Blagorovka and positions of the Ukrainian armed forces in Shorbiansky forest south of Dibrova. We are also observing attempts by the units of the Russian armed forces, supported by artillery, to advance much further northwards in the Krakhmalonui area. They have taken control of the parts that the strategic roads. Units of the Russian armed forces also attacked near Petropavlovka and Sinkiivka with the support of the long-range weapons. Ukrainian positions in Torskoye, Tornoye, Novoskoye, and Brestonov were attacked throughout the day, but managed to hold their positions. What do you think? What do you think the persistence of the Russian troops on the Kherson front line will lead to? Do you think that the Ukrainian army will continue to hold its positions? What is your opinion about the current situation on the Russian army on the Donetsk front line? What do you think about the increased activity on the Luhansk front line? Let me know in the comments. I read and care about all your comments.